He didn't even flinch when the insults started flying. One called the other a liar, a fraud, a disgrace to the country. Voices rose, cameras zoomed in, and for a moment you couldn't tell whether this was a congressional hearing or a full-blown courtroom brawl. The air was thick with accusation, but beneath the shouting was a question everyone wanted answered: what really happened to the Epstein files, and why are so many names still hidden from the American public? The exchange began like a political boxing match, one side accusing the other of lies, of putting on a show for money, of exploiting victims for headlines.
Let's strip away the word alone. Did you terminate or participate in any discipline of any FBI employee, in whole or in part, because of their work on an investigation of Donald Trump or January 6th? Yes or no?
Any terminations at the FBI by employees?
No, I'm asking you a very specific question.
And I'm going to answer the question, but you don't like the answer because it's the truth, and it guts
want
your
an answer to my
narrative.
question. I don't want an answer to someone else's question. So let me just be precise, and I ask for a yes or no answer. Did you ever terminate or discipline an FBI employee, in whole or in part, because they had been assigned or worked on an investigation of Donald Trump or January 6th?
FBI employees are only terminated if they fail to uphold their oaths of office and duty.
You're not answering my question.
I don't have to answer your question yes or no, because you're setting up a trap so you can have a media narrative.
I'm not setting up a trap.
And I'm not giving it to you.
Unless it's true that you fired people.
People have been terminated at the FBI who failed to uphold the standards that the FBI requires them to uphold.
Did you tell anyone at the FBI that all FBI employees who they identified who had worked on cases against President Trump would be removed from their jobs? Did you tell that to someone at the FBI?
Say that I would remove people for case assignments?
That people that were identified as having worked on cases against President Trump would be removed from their jobs. Did you tell that to someone at the FBI?
People are not removed for case assignments.
Just answer my question. Did you tell that to someone?
People are not removed for case
assignments. No, you're not answering my question.
And I would never
Mr. Patel,
tell anyone.
Did you tell someone at the FBI that FBI employees identified as having worked on cases against President Trump would be removed from their jobs? Yes or no, did you tell someone that?
I would never tell anyone at the FBI that they're being removed for basically their case assignments.
Okay, so anyone who had said that would be lying. Is that your testimony?
Anyone can say whatever they want.
No, I know, but you're saying they were a liar.
I'm telling you what I said.
Because this is in the complaint against you, Mr. Patel. So you're saying Mr. Driscoll and others are liars?
I'm not going to address the complaint in the ongoing
Okay, well then let me ask you, have you ever told anyone at the FBI that the FBI tried to put the president in jail and he hasn't forgotten it, and that your job depended on the removal of agents who worked on cases against the president?
No.
Did you ever tell anyone that?
No.
Okay. Did you ever tell anyone that you knew these summary firings you were undertaking were illegal, likely illegal, and that you would be sued and later deposed? Did you ever tell anyone that?
No firings at the FBI or terminations were done for anything other than justified
Did you ever
cause.
tell anyone that, Mr.
No,
Patel? Why don't you
no
answer my question?
terminations at the FBI were ever done in my tenure for anything other than failing
Did you ever
to
tell
uphold
anyone
their
that,
oath of
Mr. Patel? You willing to
office
answer
or
the question?
The FBI.
I guess
I
you're not
have
willing to
answered
answer the
it.
question. So let me move on. Let me
Repeatedly.
move on to the Epstein files. You said you're the most transparent FBI director in history, so I'm going to put you to the test. In 2024, you were asked by Glenn Beck about Epstein's Black Book. And you said, he asked, who has Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book? And you said, Black Book FBI. And he said, but who? That is, I mean theirs. And you said, oh, that's under the direct control of the director of the FBI. That's what you said. Was that true, Mr. Patel?
I'll rely on you quoting it accurately. I did that a couple
Was
of
it
years
true
ago.
what you represented to Mr. Beck and the president's supporters out there, or were you lying? Was it true that the Black Book, Epstein's Black Book, was in the possession of the FBI director?
The Black Book was in the possession of the FBI.
Okay, so now that you're the FBI director, you have possession of the Black Book, right?
That index has been released.
So you have Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book?
What is known as Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book has been released by us.
And you released it. And let me follow up on Senator Kennedy's question, because he asked you, and I'll be very precise here. You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself? And you said himself, there's no credible information, none. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And Kennedy, the information we have, again, is limited. And Senator Kennedy said, the answer is no one. And you said, for the information we have. So is it your testimony today that in all the Epstein files, that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked no one to anyone but himself? Is that your testimony, Mr.
I never said Jeffrey Epstein didn't traffic anyone else.
Did he traffic any young woman to someone other than himself? That was Mr. Kennedy's question, Senator Kennedy's question.
The information that 3 administrations have had access to have made determinations that there are no investigative leads that were credible to prosecute and investigate any others. I'm specifically stating
whether it's your testimony today.
Well, you just read it, and I said it 10 minutes ago, so let the record reflect my testimony.
I just want to make sure there's no misunderstanding, because there are victims like Virginia Guifer who have testified otherwise, who have said otherwise, and you're telling the American people today that the Epstein list is a single name and it's Jeffrey Epstein. That's what we're to believe?
That's not what I'm saying. That's what you're saying, and you can say whatever you want.
Let me ask you this. When Todd Blanche went to interview Ghislaine Maxwell, she said, but did I think these guys were coming for that? I really don't. If you met Epstein, there's no way that this cast of characters, of which it's extraordinary, and some are in your cabinet, who you value as your co-workers, and you know would be with him if he was a creep or because they wanted sexual favors. A man wants sexual favors, he will find that. They didn't have to come to Epstein for that. And the next question Todd Blanche, the president's former criminal defense lawyer, asked is not who in the cabinet, who are you referring to? His question is, so when's the last time you think you were with Mr. Epstein when he got a massage? So let me ask you, who are those cabinet members that Ghislaine Maxwell was referring to that, that were part of this cast of characters associated with Mr. Epstein? Who are they?
The Deputy Attorney General took the aggressive step that no one else did and interviewed Ms. Maxwell for 2 days, and we released the entirety of that transcript.
Who are the cabinet members?
I do not have that transcript in front of me. You're picking it piecemeal. The American public can read the entirety of that.
One last question, because you clearly won't tell us the cabinet members associated with Mr. Epstein. Let me ask you one last question. And that is, right after she gives this testimony in front of an FBI agent, among others, she's transferred to a minimum security prison not suitable for a sex offender like herself. Who made that decision and why?
The Bureau of Prisons.
The Bureau of Decisions made it in
prisons.
The Bureau.
But then the mood shifted when the words Black Book entered the room. Every journalist leaned forward, every viewer froze. Because that wasn't just a random detail, it was the key to one of the most controversial investigations in modern history. For years, people have asked the same question: who had access to Jeffrey Epstein's network, and why does the government seem determined to keep that list sealed? And on this day, inside this tense hearing, someone finally demanded an answer. The moment came when Adam Schiff locked eyes with FBI Director Patel. Schiff's tone was calm but sharp, his words surgical. "You've called yourself the most transparent FBI director in history," he said. "So let's test that." He reminded Patel of a 2024 interview where he claimed the so-called Epstein Black Book was under direct control of the FBI director. That meant that whoever sat in Patel's chair had access to it. Schiff leaned in. "Was that true?" Patel hesitated. He looked down, blinked, then said, "The Black Book was in possession of the FBI." The room murmured. Schiff didn't let go. "So now that you're the FBI director, you have it." Patel replied, "That index has been released." Schiff pressed again, voice firm. "So you have Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book." Patel exhaled and said, "What is known as Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book has been released by us." That single line hit like a thunderclap. Because while Patel was technically right, some parts had been released. He didn't mention that what was made public was mostly redacted, with huge black bars covering the names the world wanted to see. Schiff's next move made things even more uncomfortable. He turned to the heart of the matter and asked who did Epstein traffic these women to, besides himself. Patel tried to steady his tone. None, he said. There's no credible information. Schiff leaned forward again. So your testimony today is that Epstein trafficked no one to anyone but himself? Patel replied quickly. I never said that. Schiff pounced. Then did he traffic anyone else? Patel dodged again. 3 administrations reviewed the same information and found no credible leads. It was a lawyer's answer, technically correct, emotionally tone-deaf, because anyone who'd followed the case knew survivors had already testified otherwise. Virginia Giuffer's name came up. Schiff mentioned her courage, her detailed accounts, and her repeated claims that powerful men were involved. And yet here was the director of the FBI saying, under oath, that no credible evidence existed to charge anyone else. You could feel the disbelief ripple through the hearing room. For those who believed justice had been buried with Epstein himself, this was confirmation that something still wasn't right. Then Schiff pivoted to something few expected, the connections hidden in plain sight. He quoted from Ghislaine Maxwell's interview where she said that Epstein's cast of characters included people some of whom were in the cabinet. When pressed on who those figures were, she dodged just like Patel was doing now. Schiff asked directly, who were those cabinet members she referred to? Patel claimed he didn't have the transcript in front of him and accused Schiff of cherry-picking lines. He said the entire Maxwell interview had already been released in full, except the redacted parts, of course. His words sounded defensive, like someone walking on legal ice, and as he spoke you could feel the frustration in the room. Because this wasn't just about names, it was about power. If Epstein's network truly included cabinet officials or high-ranking elites, then this wasn't just a criminal case. It was a test of whether the justice system itself could handle crimes committed by the powerful. Schiff pushed again, saying, so after that testimony, why was Maxwell suddenly transferred to a minimum security prison? Who made that decision? Patel replied sharply, the Bureau of Prisons. Schiff shot back, you expect the American people to believe that happened by coincidence? Patel's face hardened. I'm not in the weeds on inmate movements, he said. I'm protecting this country. The tension was unbearable. Cameras caught Schiff shaking his head slightly, like a man who'd seen this movie too many times before. And then in a flash of anger, Patel fired back. All you care about is a child predator prosecuted by a prior administration. The FBI has provided historic reforms. We've released 33,000 pages. We are the most transparent agency in history. His words echoed, but they didn't land. Because the audience wasn't thinking about page counts. They were thinking about what was still missing, the truth. After the shouting faded, the narrator voice, calm, reflective, cut through the noise. What we just watched wasn't a debate, it said. It was a stress test for the truth. Schiff had demanded answers about what's in the Epstein materials, why so much remains sealed, and whether survivors will ever see the justice they were promised. Patel gave short answers that sounded rehearsed. We've released what we can under the law. But behind that legal phrasing was a complicated maze most Americans never see. Here's what that maze looks like. The Epstein files aren't one stack of papers sitting in a vault. They're split into several legal categories. Grand jury materials, which are secret by law. Search warrant returns, which can be sealed by judges. Witness interview reports, known as 302S. And then the massive digital archive, emails, photos, financial ledgers, surveillance footage. Each type of document falls under different legal protections. Grand jury testimony, for example, is protected by Rule 6E, meaning it can't be released without a court order. Search warrant materials can be kept secret to protect ongoing investigations or the privacy of victims. And any images or videos containing child sexual abuse material can never be released publicly. It's not optional, it's criminal evidence. But here's the catch. Just because something is protected, doesn't mean it's untouchable forever. Courts can lift protective orders. Judges can order redacted releases that hide victims' identities but still show the truth. The problem is someone has to ask for it. The DOJ has to go to court, or Congress has to formally request review under secure conditions, and that hasn't happened. Schiff's request was simple: show the process, not just the promise. If the FBI really tried to unseal those materials, where are the motions, the filings, the judge's rulings? That's where Patel's credibility comes into question. Before becoming director, he told Glenn Beck that the FBI controlled the Black Book. It was a confident statement meant to project transparency. But once in office, Patel narrowed that promise, saying only the index had been released. That's not the same thing. To the public, it felt like moving goalposts. First it was "we have it," then it became "we released what we could." Technically true, but politically evasive. And when people hear that kind of linguistic gymnastics from a lawman, they stop believing in reform, they start believing in cover-ups. But let's pause here, because behind all this legal and political chaos are real people, the survivors. Their names, their pain, their testimonies. Every time a headline mentions files, it's easy to forget that these aren't just case numbers. They're stories of abuse, fear, and silence. And when agencies say we can't release this for privacy, it can sound noble, but it can also feel like another form of denial. Survivors have a right to privacy, but they also have a right to see justice done. So what would true transparency look like? It wouldn't mean dumping evidence online. It would mean creating a victim-centered process, notifying survivors before any release, letting them review redactions, and ensuring they aren't re-traumatized by exposure. It would mean Congress setting clear legal standards for how to handle high-profile cases that involve both national security and public outrage. Because right now, those standards don't exist. Everything depends on who's in charge, which means accountability changes with every election. And that's why Schiff's questions matter. They weren't just about one case, they were about the system itself, whether the most powerful law enforcement agency in the country can be trusted to police itself. If the FBI says we asked the court, the public should be able to see that motion. If they can't, Congress should be allowed to review it in a secure room. Transparency doesn't mean chaos, it means oversight with integrity. What's happening now is bigger than Epstein. It's about whether truth can survive bureaucracy. The longer the files stay sealed, the more rumors fill the vacuum. Some believe it's all red tape, others think it's a cover-up protecting elites. The truth might be somewhere in between, but without transparency, no one will ever know. And that uncertainty is poison for democracy. In the hearing, Patel kept saying the same thing: we're protecting this country. But what does protection mean if it comes at the cost of trust? Because every time survivors are told to wait, every time the public is told you wouldn't understand, the system loses credibility. Protection without accountability isn't justice, it's control. And yet there's still a way forward. Congress has the power to demand answers. They can issue subpoenas, compel testimony, and review classified material under oath. They can legislate clearer rules for releasing redacted documents in cases of extraordinary public interest. The courts can balance privacy and transparency, but only if someone asks them to. The fight now isn't just for documents, it's for the principle that the public has a right to know, and that survivors deserve closure. By the end of that hearing, no one had changed their mind. Patel stood by his talking points. Schiff left frustrated but resolute. Cameras flashed, headlines spun, and the internet debated every word. But the real story isn't in the sound bites, it's in the silence. The silence of sealed files, unanswered motions, and survivors still waiting to be believed. And maybe that's the point. This was never just about one man or one investigation. It's about the boundaries of truth in a system built to protect and conceal at the same time. The Black Book, the sealed 302s, the unexplained transfers, they're all pieces of a larger question: can justice and secrecy coexist? Until that question is answered, this story isn't over. If you want to know what happens next, how Congress can force the unsealing of documents, what legal motions actually work, and how survivors can have a say in what gets released, subscribe now, because the next part isn't about headlines, it's about action. Hit that like button, turn on notifications, and stay tuned. The truth isn't buried, it's waiting, and together we're going to dig it out, piece by piece.